Like if you can't just compartmentalize or understand that like business it's a game and you don't always win. And sometimes you run a play and it's terrible. And sometimes you lose yards and sometimes you fumble. It's like, that is business, right?
Yeah.
And so the quicker you can get your head around that and just reload and keep going, the better off you're going to be. Matt Helen, he's back.
It's been a long time, man. How you been without me?
You haven't been here?
I haven't been in the studio
in the Beats Lab?
The Beats Lab, it might be 3 months.
That's
2
crazy.
months.
That's
I don't
crazy,
know.
isn't it?
We're doing a
Well,
lot.
dude, you're jamming. Like you got a team working and you're doing all kinds of process.
I'm squeezing you into training week right now. We got 6 new clubs right now. Rocking.
Yeah, well, appreciate
Squeeze you in the schedule.
Well, I had to get you in for this one because this is our annual, right? So this is our annual, like, things learned over 34 years. We're actually, we were 33 years in business as of September. So we're really in our 34th year.
Going into our 34th?
Yeah.
So you were 20.
We're in our 34th
You were
year.
22?
22. That's correct. Yeah, my birthday's this weekend.
So you 55?
Dude, I'm going to get... that sounds so freaking old. Dude, 55 years old. Like, I'm going to get discounts at the grocery store. I'm starting to get calls from AARP. This is out of control. Yeah. I mean, it's weird that you say that because, like, 40, 50, I'm like, oh, I look good for 50. You know, 55 is the only one where I've been like, God. So you know the median age, I believe, right now in the U.S. for lifespan for dudes is like 74? I got like 19 years. That's it.
If you're lucky.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. But I get hit by a bus on my motorcycle or whatever, or jump out of a plane, my chute doesn't open. It's like, I don't know, man. It's wild.
What is 55? I know you're not quite there yet. It will be when this drops. What's 55 feel like?
It doesn't feel any different. No, I actually feel really good. Like physically, I feel great. Mentally, I feel good. I don't have like a lack of energy, nothing. I don't get it. But like, I don't know, man, maybe 55 is the new 45. I don't even know what to say.
So to me and my wife, we're both like 40, right?
Yeah.
So
are you 40 right now?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I'm only 39. She's 40. If she's listening to this, you're 40.
Mallory, you cougar, you.
But we always talk like how are you supposed to feel, how you supposed to act, 55, 40, whatever. And I swear, I get around other people and I'm like, man, I feel so young. Like there's so much adulting. Like I feel like a kid still, like just a dumb teenager a lot of the time.
I think that's natural. I feel the same way. I'm like 55. And if I see, I think there is some truth to the fact that there's a stark difference between whether you're 40 or 55, if you've taken care of yourself physically, right? I know that my daughter's a cardiac ICU nurse, and she texted me the other day and said she's had a rough run of it the last few days, that she's had patients that have passed away. Now, she's cardiac ICU. If you're in there, you're in a bad place. She's ECMO trained, which is basically this machine that runs your heart, essentially. And so if you're in there, you're in a bad spot. So she lost 2 patients on back-to-back days, which is devastating. And both of them were 51 years old. So, I mean, there's a big difference between someone who has somehow organized their life in a way to have a massive heart disease at 51, and I feel for them. But you have some, agency over your life. It's like you can control some of that. And I don't say that as like, yeah, get your shit together. I'm not even being harsh. It's just like, man, just try to live a little bit longer. Like 50 years is nothing from somebody who's older than that. But
Seems like a long time,
great.
but it's not, yeah.
Well, I'm going to Vegas for my birthday. That should tell you something. So it's going to get wild.
Please come back.
55. I'm going to stay up till 8 o'clock. 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Wild.
Good luck with that.
That's right. I'll catch up with my programs when I get back. I'll record them on my VCR. You got a dad
awesome.
joke? It's been so long.
I do.
Let's see what you got.
Did you know if you eat aluminum foil, you'll sheet metal?
Are we doing bathroom theme today?
Bathroom theme.
I got one. This one's a little bit saucy, so like apologies to those who aren't as saucy. What? Oh my gosh, this is probably going to get us canceled. What do you call a pirate that pees on people?
I don't know.
Arg, Kelly. Sorry, not sorry. That's terrible. Anywho,
34 years.
Yeah, 34 years. So I try to organize this each year. We've done like 33 ways to, to ruin your fitness business. That's sort of tongue in cheek, like do the opposite. This year, it's like, let's keep it simple, man. We're growing. I haven't been able to get you in here in 3 months, so we're busy. So I figured we would do 34 years. And in the spirit of the 3 and the 4, we'll do 3 myths that have been debunked over our time span in business, 3 decades plus, and then 4 truths that I kind of knew, but that have been reinforced time and time again.
Yeah, it's good.
We'll start with the 3 myths debunked since it's 34.
You even printed me out these things. This is nice. It's like a whole new Beats lab these days.
Take it serious now, Matt.
Didn't even write it down as they printed out. Well, all right. So 3 myths debunked. The first one you have is shore up your weaknesses.
Yeah, I think that you hear that a lot, right? Like if you've got weaknesses, you need to get better at those weaknesses. And I think there's a base level of competency in certain weaknesses. Like if you're horrible in finance and you run a business, you need to have the basic understanding of a P&L or finances, at least so that your finance person, or if you're in a small business, your accountant can send you your financials and you can understand what you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that would be an example of like, okay, you don't need to be a spreadsheet king. You don't need to understand anything other than how is our business performing. And in this case, numbers would be like how you keep score as an adult, right? Like, if customers like your business, they're going to pay for it, and that's going to manifest itself in your numbers. So like, but I know a lot of people in the fitness space, at least, maybe not our franchisees because they're pretty savvy, but people that are like owner operators, they struggle with finance at times. And then because of that, they just tend to like look away from it. Like they don't want to see their numbers. They just want to do the thing. And they're so in love with like the process and everything. And there's nothing wrong with that, but there needs to be a core competency. But outside of that, I don't think if you're really interested in customer experience, as an example, and you're pretty good at that, and that may be the crux of your entire business, that may be why people are coming in, I would argue, in personal training is probably true.
Sure.
To spend an inordinate amount of time on a spreadsheet or learning deep finance that isn't beneficial to your particular business, it's a waste of time. Yes, it may be a weakness compared to someone who's in finance, but I think more importantly, you would look for the bright spots in your business. Like, what do we do really, really well? And just double down on the things you do really well, or maybe triple down or 10x or whatever those things are. Do look for bright spots instead of shoring up weaknesses. Now, again, I say that meaning base level weaknesses, sure, have some understanding of what's going on, but that whole advice of like attacking all of your weaknesses, I think it's at the expense of the talents or whatever that you've created that you do well. I think you should look at that and just double down on that and just maybe get your weaknesses to a suitable level.
I think it's just being aware of your weaknesses and either, addressing them, like outsourcing them to fix them with, other tools, other people, versus spending a majority of your time trying to fix just those areas at what you're saying at the cost of improving in the areas you're really good at.
That's a great point. A case in point, like as a CEO, like a lot more about your function than I do, right? Whether it be the creation of the programs or how the customer experience fits into the programs or the operations or the software. I don't know a tenth of what you know in that area, but I know how to. I'm fortunate, but I know how to have a guy like you on the team, right? It's like I can identify like this is a gap that we have, and this guy's really good at this thing, and so I'm going to let him run the thing. And the more that you grow, the dumber you become in your organization as a CEO. And so that's also, but you're shoring up your weaknesses, to your point, by hiring people. Like if I know more about digital marketing than our person that does digital marketing or sets up the social media pages and the website, if I know more about website than Shannon, we're in trouble, right? I shouldn't. But if I just followed this advice, then I would have to learn everything about everything. And even like a guy like Elon Musk, they say he's a bit of a freak because he can talk engineering, he can talk finance, he can talk all the things around his business. I guarantee there's still engineers on his team that he understands what they're telling him, but he's not in there designing, that rocket getting caught by those robot arms or whatever. That's super cool. I'm sure he theoretically understands how it happens, but he doesn't do it. He doesn't code it. Right. He could, maybe, but he's probably has other things you got to work on. And I feel the same way. So that would be an example at the highest level of not worrying about your weaknesses. Just hire them out, understand the process, have measurements for the process, but you don't have to do the thing, be the best at it. So I think that's a myth. Don't shore up your weaknesses, highlight your strengths and triple down on those.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense. Anything else on that?
No.
You good?
I'm good.
You're like a lot shorter these days. You get through these things pretty quick.
Time for this, yeah.
Remember back when we started.
That's another thing I've learned.
Those podcasts were like an hour and a half long.
Say less, do more. We were drunk. So we don't do that anymore.
All right. The second one on 3 Myths Debunked is the customer always knows best.
Yeah, this can be, it's a saucy thing to write down because it does matter what the customers think. I think whether they like your thing or not, whether or not you're making money, because that's how you keep score. We talked about it earlier. But in this case, I always think of the Henry Ford quote where he says, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And I use that example when I talk about when we went from one-on-one training to what we called at the time semi-private, which is now small group personal training, or personal training in a small group. We were doing a lot of one-on-one training, upwards of 3,000 sessions a month. We had tons of coaches, and we knew just empirically, like, Matt, you come in, you decide to bring a friend in. You guys pay a little less, we make a little more for the hour. Everybody's having more fun. I can help more people. And then you guys have a third guy in the neighborhood. He comes in, you pay a little bit less. Right. I make a little more for the hour, help more people. And that just starts compounding. So enough of that was happening organically where it was a risk to pivot away from a really successful business to rip the Band-Aid off and just say, hey, we're going to this because we saw the writing on the wall. No one liked it. People don't like change in general. So every client would say things like, you're taking the personal out of personal training. So we had to educate our team to be able to withstand that, because the people on the front lines, which are the coaches that were delivering the thing, had to be armed with the information. And you also had to drive the belief, right? So that they could stand out there with conviction and be like, just try it for me. Trust me, you're going to love it. And have all these great stories. I think, again, we had a crazy guy here who was like, I don't know what you're doing. You're pulling the wool over my eyes. I'm like, we're giving you more service for less money, because everyone was paying less money as well, right? Or they were getting longer sessions or more time invested in them. And I remember a year later, he was the last holdout that didn't want to switch. And a year later, he was at the desk and he was like, hey, what do you guys have, say, Friday at 4:00? And whoever was working with him was like, oh, yeah, we've got 4. He's like, how many people are in that session? He's like, I'm not coming unless there's at least 2 other people. This was the guy who swore he would never do it. And that we were taking the personal out of personal training is now saying, I literally won't come in unless there's more people in the session. So at some point, you have to trust your gut. It would be like I'm not saying that we're this, but you'd have to be like a Steve Jobs saying, I want all the music in that phone right there. It's like, geez, nobody needs that, right? We got albums, or we got, you just don't know you need it until someone creates it and then you need it. Right. So there's a little bit of that where the customer knows best to an extent. They can tell you whether they're enjoying the thing or not, but there are going to be times when you have to create something that's different than that. Or like, say you're an Alloy franchisee and you're bringing this concept to a neighborhood. It might be different for you. Like maybe you're a person that's always had a regular gym membership and you're like, people are going to pay $300 or $400 a month to work out. It's like, well, yeah, because those same people are going to pay $1,200 to $1,500 a month at a local gym for a one-on-one trainer. And they're like, or they'll say like, oh, do people ask, is it bad if you can have up to 6 people in there? I'm like, no, no one ever even asks, by the way. And if they do, it's just personal training. It's just less expensive, right? And they end up liking it more anyways. So again, it's one of those things where the customer is important, but sometimes you have to know what's better for them before they know it, and you just have to prove it to them.
I'm always obviously in the trenches of operations and all the studios, so I'm always like down in this realm, and you do a good job always, making sure I look at things the right way. But I always, anytime a customer complains or about a thing, or, how many parking spots you have or what kind of shirts you have, before you panic because somebody said something you need to automatically change because of the customer, you're like, well, are all the customers saying that, or is it just this one person?
Well, how many times have you heard that? Like in our history here, it's like even when we were going to small group, like it was tough out there because people didn't like it. They didn't like change. They didn't know what it was.
Right.
And so the impression could be, this is what here, everyone hates this.
Right.
Who's everyone?
Right.
And then when you drill down, it was like 2 people out of
Steve.
Right. Yeah. It was Steve from accounting. He hated it. Well, people don't like change, and some people are going to be very vocal about it. But who are they really? So maybe zoom out a bit, look at the real data. And just because you got some negative feedback doesn't mean that like everyone hates it. And you have to trust that it's really good for the customer and just keep plowing forward until you prove it to them.
Yeah. Don't have to throw everything out immediately, pivot.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
From one piece of negative feedback, like that would be awful, So no. But yeah, that's a good
you could always from a business setting, like managing your teams too, you could see this, like I hired one employee, they told me this doesn't work, that other, I just totally go with them, believe them, throw everything out just because one person.
Yeah, I mean, look, we run the risk of that in the franchise because we have people, our most successful franchisees are not from the fitness business. So they hire fitness people to work in their facilities. And if they hire somebody that comes with experience, sometimes that's good. And sometimes that curse of knowledge can be bad. And that curse of knowledge can manifest itself in that person saying, oh, I think we should do it this way. And if you're not the, again, to us, maybe the franchisee, we call them partner, they're kind of a customer in ways as well. And so that particular individual doesn't know best, right? They have this curse of knowledge and they're trying to mess with something that is built purposely to help them be successful. but they don't know that, right? And so they're trying to tweak it and massage it, and there's no point. It's typically things like, I'm going to do curtsy lunge instead of regular lunges. I'm like, why are we focused on that when we're not even sending our text messages at the end of our shift, which is a post-shift duty that is really impactful for customer service? Like, we're not focused on the main things, right? And so that's where, like, as far as the franchisee maybe, and maybe even their team being customers, and I'm air quoting, or partners of Alloy, like, no, I promise you, we built this thing for you to succeed. Like you said, we have training week right now, and I was speaking to a director, and he's like, I used to own a fitness business for 8 years. What's going to be my secret to success? Who kills it? I'm like, forget everything you've known and just run the play. And some of it will be familiar and some you'll question, but I promise you, we built something that's going to help you be successful. So if you can kill some of your ego and just run the play, put all your creative juices in how to make the people feel great, right? Run the play. Make sure your coaches make sure you're doing surprisingly personable every month and surprising people. Do client events. You know, take a walk around the parking lot with a client who's struggling every now and then. That's where you put your juice, right?
Right.
And that's the stuff that really makes a difference, not the type of lunge that you do.
Yeah.
So I know that's a bit of a stretch with a customer, but that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Well, you kind of jumped into the next one, which is knowledge is power.
Yeah, maybe. You know, it was interesting early on, we had decided that we would bring on some people that were already in the fitness industry. I've had them on the podcast before. A lot of them are super dynamic. But it was interesting because early on, a lot of them didn't do as well as some of the people that weren't in the fitness industry, right? And of course, I knew all of them personally, so I could challenge them and tease them and be like, "How come it is that why have you been in the business for 10 years and you're not in my top third of franchisees?"
Right?
And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, why are you switching marketing companies in the middle of a thing?" Like, just doing things that are very reactive, right? And it's based on, I know better. This used to work in my business. Well, now you're in 4 businesses, right? Like, having 3 or 4 locations is a lot different than 1 location. And maybe it worked when you were in there every day and you could drive this culture, but now you're scaling, and scale means you need to keep it simple. So we built this thing with scale in mind, right? So sometimes that knowledge is difficult to overcome, and it can be good at times, and other times it can be a detriment. So I think always assuming, to debunk that myth that knowledge is power, it depends. It really does. Because let's say you're like, I've been in the industry for 10 years. It's like, yeah, maybe you only have 1 year of experience and it ain't that great, and you just repeated it 10 years in a row. You don't really have 10 years of experience, right?
Right.
If you're not like we talk about, be a student, not a critic, right? If you're not someone who can look at any new process or opportunity and learn from it, then maybe you don't have that much experience. You've just been doing the wrong thing for a really long time. Right? That sounds mean, but like everybody's fallen victim to that at some point in their lives. And we really push ourselves to, there's probably trainers in that room that are here for training that are brand new to the industry who I could learn something from if I just pick their brain and talk to them for a minute. And I truly believe that, right? And we learn from our franchisees as much as they learn from us. But sometimes that knowledge can be crippling for people, and that little bit of knowledge can work against them if it keeps them from running the play.
Yeah, I mean, just overall, the being coachable, being open, like you said before we started, you're like, I'm always, I asked you, like, when do you get stuck in your ways at your old age? 55. I don't know if that's right around the corner for you, but I mean,
well, at my age, you forgot what your ways were, so it doesn't matter. Every day's new way. You don't even know your name.
I saw you wandering around your office the other day.
I didn't know what I was doing in there. Where am I?
He was in a glass office, couldn't get out. But it is a big deal, and in probably in more industries, it's the same thing. Obviously, we're in fitness. I've been in fitness, and you see it a lot in our field, right? A lot of ego out there. I know best, right? So just being open, seeing how something else may work is huge.
Yeah, and you're really good about, you'll borrow things from other industries, which I think is great. Like, what's another business that does amazing customer service? How about hospitality? How about restaurants? And you look at all that stuff and try to bake those behaviors into, what we do. And then it becomes not so much like, what I love about what we do is the programming. Turns out you would think that's like what we do, right? That's like if we had a hamburger place, like we had a great hamburger. Turns out that making that hamburger, and for us, like having great scientific workouts, that's the easy part. Making them come to life, like with a systematic way to get the hamburger to the front counter, to get it to the customer, to make them feel good about it, to have the person behind the counter smile and ask them if they can help them and treat them well. That's really hard. Turns out the main thing is actually not that difficult. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to, if you're stuck and always trying to figure out ways to change the hamburger, you never can actually be in the experience.
No, that's a great way to put it. You're blinded by you don't understand what the main thing is, right? Well, I often use this, again, this would be maybe as it pertains to like coaching and training, is the old Bruce Lee adage we've talked about a million times. first started martial arts, a punch was a punch and a kick was a kick.
Yep.
Then I learned more, and there was angles and different techniques and different styles of martial arts, and it became very confusing. And then he said, once again, when I became a fifth degree black belt, once again, a punch was a punch and a kick was a kick. So I think brand new people to the industry are really good, which is why the top third of our performers, now they've got some fitness people in there, but at first they didn't, because those people just ran the play because they didn't know any better, right? And then the person who's really advanced, who, maybe we've got people that come to the table that already have franchise experience from other franchises, they tend to just run the play, right? It's the folks in the middle that just know enough to be dangerous, who want to like change everything up when it's just not necessary, right? And especially if you're crushing it in your location, most of the ones that are just running the play. I'd say all of them. But if there's a variation to that and you're one of our top clubs, we're going to listen. If you're in the mid of the pack and you're trying to like change everything around, well, you're probably not going to get our attention as far as things to change, because you have to prove that the things that you want to change are actually effective, right? And normally we don't hear about them until people start changing them, and that ends up being why they're a mid performer instead of a top performer. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it's a weird thing to say, because it sounds like it's coming from a place of ego as a franchisor, like just run the play. It's not. I tell people this all the time. There's not much meat on the bone for us in that upfront franchise fee. So if we don't get you open into revenue, we don't make any money. So why would we give you advice that would by default hurt our ability to also have a viable business? We don't. I promise you, we all want to win. And so
it's probably a bad business model. Do you think people buy like McDonald's and say like, hey, I'm going to change the Big Mac?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, granted, is it easier to deliver a hamburger than a personal training session? Probably, but it's the same concept.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, those are 3 myths. Show up your weaknesses. Customer always knows best. Knowledge is power. The next is 4 truths reinforced. The first one is trust is a currency.
Yep. I talk about this at Discovery Day a lot, where there's something called the Edelman Barometer, which is essentially, it's like a worldwide measure of trust. All self-reported, but they only use 4 entities. They use private business, they use government, media, and then NGOs, which is like kind of government, but like Red Cross, things like that, right?
Yep.
Non-government organizations. And no one makes it into the quadrant that's both competent and trustworthy, right? And so you got like media, government, they make it into neither, right? Rightly so. Private business, competent for sure, maybe not always trustworthy.
Yep.
And then you've got NGOs who might be trustworthy, but their business model is usually not good. They typically don't run a very tight ship business-wise, right? Budgeting and things like that. So I think when you look at that, if trust is at an all-time low and no one makes it into the competent and trustworthy category, it's not really hard to be that good in today's market. People don't believe anything, by the way.
No.
It's like election results, medical advice. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe everything, and maybe that's rightly so, right? That being said, if you have a brand promise, and ours is personal training, and you promise someone that in the brand, and then they come into the facility and it speaks to personal training, and you do a really good, you peel the onion and you measure how they move and you see what's going on inside their body, and they have a shoulder injury, and you tell them that we're going to work around your shoulder injury, and then the director puts the notes into the app and gets the detail in, and the coaches take the time to do what they're supposed to do, which is look at the information on the client. Everyone can deliver a safe and effective session, doesn't hurt this person's shoulder, and it's personal training. You're going to win 9 times out of 10. To me and you, that would be like table stakes, right? It just means like, this is all, I'm anteing up just to get in the game. Like if you can't do that, you shouldn't be in the game. But I think it's so rare, maybe unfortunately these days in business, that if you can just do that, you're going to win.
I know. Isn't that a huge opportunity?
Oh man, that's a great way to put it. That's a way more positive spin on it, man. I appreciate that. Because yeah, it's like, I mean, out there is this massive opportunity to have a killer business and for us to have a killer brand, because this is the brand promise. Looking good, feeling great, living life to the fullest. If we can get people to look a little bit better, feel really good, and get outside the gym and do all the things they've ever wanted to do, and certainly in our success stories that's happening, and we don't hurt them, and everything that we promise them happens, whether it's in an advertisement all the way down to how it's delivered in the club, you're going to win every time. And I think it's not that hard to do that. To your point, if it's not, what a great opportunity to go out there and build a great brand and a business.
Well, people already don't trust people, right? Or just trust businesses, organizations, whatever, but they are then looking for something they can trust. And if you can provide that, I mean, we've seen it, and we got members been there for 34 years.
Yeah, we've had members the whole time, and they've been through, like, I always tease about, like, Sharon, the client at our home gym. Yeah. I think she won client of the month after 28 years. I saw her in the grocery store parking lot. She's crazy. She started in her 50s. Now she's in her 80s. And she's like, oh, I finally got customer of the year after 30 years. And I was laughing. I was like, oh, maybe you'll win it again. She's like, I'll be dead. I'm like, oh, good talk. See you later. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, who stays with a brand for 30 years? Well, Think about what she's been through. She built a huge hospital consulting business and exited it. Great, good for her. Husband got cancer. He passed away, sadly. Then she started another business, built that up, exited it. She's gone through all these. She had rotator cuff surgery. So we've worked with her through all these phases. So you're talking about trust that you build with somebody, right? They know who you are. You always say what you're going to do, and you always do what you say, and you've got a customer for life. And to your point, what a great opportunity. I don't think it's that difficult to do that, but again, apparently it is, because a lot of businesses miss on that.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, just literally, like you said, showing up every day, doing what you say, following up. It becomes not even about the thing ever. They just trust you to put their lives, their fitness in your hands. And no matter what's going on, I mean, imagine, she was sharing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, all this stuff in her own life, all this stuff through the world, what's going on, still 100% bought in.
Yeah. And it's the place that you go to where, okay, there's a crazy election or people are heated or this or that. It's like, if you have one spot in your life that's just steady and you can trust it and the people are going to be there, and you know that, and fitness is very, cliche, but like, it's very personal to people, right? But it is, right? Like be at a party and tell them about your gutter cleaning business. They're going to yawn and walk off. Tell them you own a personal training center and see how long they talk to you forever, because it's very personal to people. Yep. So in an area or an arena of people's lives where it's right on their heart and super close to them, you show up consistently, do what you say you would do, and take care of them, you're going to have a customer for life.
Yeah. 100%.
Great opportunity. I like the way you put that.
That's great. All right. So that was the first one. Second one is consistently good over sporadically great.
I think I've probably stated this a million times, but I'm going to do it again just for the sake of this conversation. So, study done by McKinsey and Company, and they looked at companies that were providing customer experience, and they measured it, right? 1 to 10. What was interesting is you would think that the companies that nobody can stay at a 10. Let me start with that. It's really hard, right? It's almost impossible. And so, but every now and then people can be at a 10, which you think like that would be great, right? So like, all right, so I can be at a 10. That's what I want to shoot for. But you're actually, based on the studies, better off being modestly good, right, over a long period of time than you are being sporadically great. And what I mean by that is their study said if you could hit like a 5. Now, no one sits in a boardroom and says like, you know what, you guys, we're going to be mediocre this year. Let's do it. Right. But I'll tell you, being consistently mediocre, or maybe it goes back to trust, you can do the thing, right? Doing it, modestly well, consistent over time beats every now and then having an amazing customer experience. You remember the stories about the restaurants that they found out they had a customer that loved their meals and it posted on social media. They were sick. They couldn't leave the house. And their favorite thing that they loved was eating at this restaurant. And they were missing out on it. So the restaurant saw the post and like took a meal over to their house, which was amazing. And they're like, oh my God, it must be the best restaurant in the world. But if you go to their Google reviews, they were at like a 3.2 because half the time they're understaffed. The food is not that good. So this one person liked it. And that was a great 10 that they did something amazing. But if you're not going to do that all the time, you might be better off not doing that at all and just shoring up doing the basics really well consistently. And again, there was real metrics behind this. It wasn't kumbaya campfire studies. It was like, listen, these companies spent 15% less on marketing. They had 20% better profit margins. So there's all these manifestations of a consistent customer experience, moderately good, consistent customer experience that manifested themselves in your numbers.
Yeah. I mean, that one just seems like common sense. If I'm like, think about it.
Do you think so?
It should be.
Right.
I mean, if you consistently show up, do what you're going to say, you don't have to do any crazy stuff. Imagine what that's going to do for that customer experience, right? If you want to have this up and down, today was great, yesterday was okay experience, I mean, that's just not sustainable.
And an example,
playing with a client emotions, I mean, it's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's the point. And where you really see this manifest itself, like say we drill down to just an alloy location, is coach to coach, right? Yeah. So if you have one coach that's more, and I'm air quoting advanced, and they run the play, and you've got someone that's part-time that comes in the evening, and you've got the same client that just so happens to work out some mornings and some evenings, and they get 2 different coaches, which does happen quite a bit. If the second coach doesn't run the play correctly, there's a loss in perceived service, right? Yeah. Even if the person in the evening is doing what they think is providing great service, but they do it in a way that goes outside the framework, it's still going to hurt the business and it's going to hurt the client long term because they're going to have this perceived like, oh, I really like working with Matt because he had me do extra ab work and I got to do sit-ups and crunches. Well, if we say that sit-ups and crunches is probably not the best choice for our customer avatar because it's tough on your back, so we're not going to blow up if you do one crunch. But like, again, let's just keep it safe and let's not do it. If that coach in the evening had just run the play and it was a 6 out of 10, not a 10 for that particular night for that particular client,
Right.
they would have stayed longer and they'd been really happy because there wasn't a huge discrepancy between what they were getting in the morning and what they're getting in the evening. And I know when you're listening to this, people are like, wait a minute, you're telling me just to go like half in? No, I'm just saying be consistently good. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like you've told the haircut story 1,000 times, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's you can't have a difference in customer experience. And the hard part with it is people, it's hard to see because it won't pop its head out until later, right?
Oh yeah, it manifests itself
right.
like later down the road. You start seeing churn.
You could be doing
or
really
whatever.
good, and you're like, oh, things are great, and not say anything because you're scared to
Rock
have
the
that
boat.
conversation, rock the boat, and then it comes and bites you in the ass. So
Yeah,
You
we've
see it a
seen
lot.
that a lot of times where people will get in a business, they'll get like a rogue manager or director or something, and they'll start doing all kinds of wacky stuff, and it's not sustainable. And the customer perception is that they're getting all these extras, but they're really not. And in the long run, it shoots the whole business in the foot, and the whole thing is it just kind of gets stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep, it's good. All right, number 3, disrupt, don't innovate.
Yeah, I think in this regard, it's always easy to look at something that does well already and then just do it a little bit better. And I mean, you can do this through efficiencies, you can do it through scale, you can do it through simplicity, right? You can do a lot of things to take something that already exists and make it a little bit better. Typically, that's where where you really make a big difference, whether it's in volume, like helping people, or in our case, one and the same, making more money, right? Is when you take a process or a system, like, okay, you take personal training, and then we do it a little bit different. We put them in a group of 6, right? It's like, okay, well, it's just personal training, right? I'm like, yes, but we disrupt it in the sense that it's a little bit less expensive.
Yep.
Because people aren't paying $150 an hour in these markets now. It might be 60 or 50 or whatever that is, right? So they're paying a third sometimes of the cost that they would pay at a health club to get what I would argue is a better service because the science is good, right? You're not relying on that one individual. It's a system behind it with lots of volume and data to back it up. That's really where businesses do well. And I mean, none of us are Steve Jobs. We're not going to come up with a new smartphone or, it's just going to be difficult to do that. And I think doing that also goes back talking about the customer, always knows best as being a myth. That's one thing. I mean, but changing process a little bit, like us going from one-on-one to small, it's still personal training, right? We changed the way we serviced it. So that's where the innovation is. We're not coming up with a brand new process that no one's ever thought of.
Kickbox personal training.
What's that?
Kickbox personal training.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So small group, yeah, small group massage.
Small group massage.
You have an octopus in there servicing 8 people at once. But I mean, yeah, things like that. So don't get too crazy. That's all I'm saying. Like normally the magic is in the efficiencies, the repeatability, the economies of scale. Don't try to come up with something that no one's ever thought of. And boy, entrepreneurs are really bad about this. Like, I've got an idea that no one's ever thought of. It's like, well, there may be a reason, unless you are a Steve Jobs, and maybe you are. I just find it much easier to take an existing process or business and just do it a little bit better, a little bit more efficiently, a little bit cleaner, bring down the friction for the customer as they're coming into the system. Whatever those things are, that to me is where the real rub is.
Yeah, I mean, you see that a lot, obviously, in business owners, entrepreneurs. I see it, folks will get in and it's almost like people just like to change things without, they're just like, I'm going to do something totally different. I don't know if it's boredom or if it is entrepreneurship.
Well, it takes as much discipline to not do that as it does to do it, especially as an entrepreneur. So you want to get in there and really you're just in there changing for the sake of change, right? And we're going to touch on this one on the next point, but you're just changing for the sake of change. That's not, you're not looking, I had a great question again from a director that's here and he's like, hey, what are people done to be successful, right? I'm like, I know it sounds like a cliche saying, just run the play. Right? You don't need to change it. Like we have disrupted the personal training market by offering this unique proposition right here in the middle of, there's a little bit of sociability that you get from class-based concept. There's all the specificity of personal training. It's a great value proposition to the personal training customer avatar. Just run the play.
Yep.
That's the disruption. To come in and be like, I'm going to change this whole thing. A lot of people would ask us, I'll give you an example. Like, why didn't you build your own app? Or why don't you build a CRM software? I'm like, why would I do that? Like, that is not my business, right? I don't want to innovate and build a whole new software that no one's thought of. A, it's not my core competency. B, if you're going to build an app, as an example, you have to be in the app business. You don't want to build a giant piece of technology that just services your brand. And because, by the way, all the other apps that are in the app business are just going to mow right over yours anyway. And so everyone in your system is going to think it's terrible because they're using a third-party app that's better. That's why we chose an app partner.
Yeah.
Right? Pay some dev cost, carve out an alloy version of it, let them keep making advancements in the things that we do outside the gym, and we get to take advantage of those as well. So yeah, disrupt, don't innovate would be something that's really proved out a million times over.
All right, this is a good one. Number 4, emotional resilience is essential.
I don't even know how I can state this any other way than we have in 5 million ways. Still in control of your emotions, all the things, right? But I am always surprised at people that have a hard time with this. And I think it's because I've only done entrepreneurship. So maybe shame on me for even being surprised that can be tough for people. But I think if you had to ask, what's the one personality trait of the franchisees that we have that have been successful, and even before that, the 2,500 door fronts that we worked with, and you did a lot of business coaching for different brands as well, is the emotional resiliency of the owner or the leadership team is going to be the key, because things are going to happen. It's business. Again, the only constant is change. I know it's cliche, but it's true. Everything's changing. Markets, environment, science, certainly technology, AI is coming down the pipe. It's like all these things are going to be there. So if you aren't resilient and you can't understand how to operate in what feels like chaos and change, you're really going to struggle. And I mean, it feels real. Someone like me will look at it and be like, what are you freaking out about? It's no big deal. Like, sure, you hired a director. Now they're moving to Tahiti with their better half. It's like, so what? Hire another director. But I had my perfect team in place. Now somebody's leaving. I'm like, yeah, that's the way this works, by the way. It works just like this in any business.
Right.
You're going to go through times when it's just magic and you're just coasting, and you go through times when it is brutally hard. Your ability to hold back in the times when it's good and not get too overextended, and then times to push through when it's really difficult. It goes back to that old 20-mile march thing that we've talked about, right?
Would you say entrepreneurship? What you're saying, entrepreneurship's a self-help journey or something?
Disguised as a business.
Yeah.
Yeah, a million times over. So if you're only going to go as far as you can take your organization, even if you're an alloy franchisee and you got sites on 6 or 8 and you're going to hire a regional, if you can't grow and pull your team along with you, right, underneath you, so that they grow with you, it's for naught. You're going to be stuck forever.
Sure.
And you're going to be confused as to why. And I'll give you an example. If it manifests itself, if you panic every time there's a hiccup, that's going to be passed downstream to your team. I don't care what you say. Like if every time something happened in our business, I freaked out in here. And I mean, franchising's tough, right? So if we had something that came up in a franchise, like we had a leadership meeting, and every time something came up, I freaked out, lost it. It was like, you guys it would be a terrible place for you guys to be as well.
I don't think I've actually ever seen it.
Well, it's not worth it. Like, I might feel it. I mean, there's no doubt. Like, I'm not saying like be Spock, don't have emotions. I mean, there's times when I'm just like, yeesh, but I can't project that onto you guys, and I can't communicate that. You got to eat it and just stuff it down in that little place down there where you put all your other pain. Don't ever let it out. No, I mean, really, you've got to be. And I think if there was a trait that I could point to that would make any business owner, an alloy franchisee, any entrepreneur successful, it's going to be emotional resilience. It's tough.
I mean, entrepreneurship, man, life, man. I mean, like,
no, that's a good point.
I mean, it's just like, well, we just went through COVID and, now the election. I mean, people get stressed out about things, and not like that isn't warranted, but like, keep it together.
Yeah, right? Because at the end of the day, like I posted right before the election, it's like 99% of your problems are of your own doing. Like, it doesn't, I mean, yes, the election's a big deal. Participate, weigh in, but like, you're not going to change anyone's mind by losing your mind, and you're not going to do it if it's another issue that's not political. Even if you're completely, not well sorted emotionally, right? Then your team's you're going to lose that trust. They're not going to know how to feel about anything. You're going to put everyone on edge. And even for your own mental sanity, like, if you can't just compartmentalize or understand that like business it's a game and you don't always win. And sometimes you run a play and it's terrible. And sometimes you lose yards and sometimes you fumble. It's like, that is business, right?
Yeah.
And so the quicker you can get your head around that and just reload and keep going, the better off you're going to be. I've seen it even in our franchise system where, we don't build our own software, which is crazy. We work with the largest software company in the fitness industry, and sometimes their platform will go down. It's software, right? I'll bet you if I pulled out the record of who's doing the best in our franchise, I would get a less emotional response from the ones that were killing it versus the ones that were mid-level performers, right?
Yeah.
And I know that's a weird test, but I've seen it a million times over. Like, okay, the software's down for 3 hours because there was a glitch. It doesn't happen often. It might happen once every 2 years, but it happens. And if it happens and everyone as a mid-level performer is losing their mind, And everyone that's a really good performer is like, that's cool. We'll get it back online when we need to.
Right.
They're having the same emotional reaction that this person is that's freaking out. They just keep it under control, and they keep the main thing, and they're like, okay, I got clients in front of me right now. I got to work with my coaches. I'm going to do these things, right? They're not freaking out about every little thing. And I think it's not like that's a tell-all, detailed study with any kind of like real data, but I've noticed it. And it's like, it is interesting that our better performers seem to be more well-sorted emotionally, and they just wake up and do good work every day and don't let things bother them too much.
Good thing is you can get better at it, right? Just like anything.
It's a muscle.
You could develop like calluses from it, right?
Yeah,
you just
that's a great way to put it. Yeah, calluses.
Because franchising, like you said, it's not easy. Been through lots of stuff. There's stuff that used to elicit a response from us that doesn't anymore, right?
Yeah.
We're just like, oh, that's okay. This is what you're going to do. Like, it's no big deal. But
I think hearing it's important. Like, I know that there was a great book written about franchising, about the relationship between franchisor and franchisee from, what's the guy's name? Greg Nathan out of Australia. He's a good relationship. He speaks a lot to the relationship between franchisee and franchisor, right? So I bought the book that he had, and we talked about it, we read it, and basically it was like, hey, here's what's normal in franchising. So that way, when those things pop up, it's not like we're freaking out, because we already knew that this is the nature of franchisor-franchisee relationship, right? It's a partnership. Partnerships can be tricky, and sometimes they work really well, and sometimes there's some friction, and that's okay. That's why we have sincere candor as a core value, so we can actually talk through those things. But if we hadn't been armed with that info, and we also weren't resilient to understand that, like, this is not very fun right now. We're in this like chaotic time, and it seems like this new process we have is not very popular or whatever, we would just crumble. But you have to just say, hey, it's franchising. Some people are going to love it. Some people are not going to love it, but it's going to be best for them overall. It kind of goes back to like customers always best, right?
Yeah.
Like, who doesn't like it?
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody hates it. One person? Okay, I think we're going to be okay. Yeah, Steve, you asshole. But yeah, so I think emotional resilience is probably the most important attribute that you could have as an entrepreneur or a small business owner. And to your point, I think it's just like a muscle. You put it under stress over time, it gets stronger, and you can get better at that. It's not entrepreneurs are born, not made. I do think there's some inherent, talent and some skills that you're born with that make it easier for you.
Sure.
But ultimately, I think it's, to your point, they're made. I think you can make yourself into an entrepreneur by building these resilient muscles over time, and it's going to be key. If you can do that, I think you're going to do pretty well. If not, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I always, I've done lots of franchise trainings, and I don't even realize it. I guess I am pretty calm when people talk to me. So people are like, man, why are you so calm? I'm like, I don't know. It's just my affect. But it's what it is. Because they're very panicked and stressed, and, they're ready to do the thing, which I totally understand. And I'm just standing up there very calm, which is important, because when they're now doing the thing, their clients are probably not well sorted, all of them. They're going to need to be that calming presence. So to your point.
Yeah, well, it starts with us, right? So if you can present that to them, like if they call you in a panic over like a one piece of client feedback, and you've heard it, and why are you calm? Because you sat in the director's seat, you've been here 15 years. You're like, oh yeah. Like they say that, what they really mean is this, all you need to do is da-da-da-da-da. So they'll get there, right? But your ability to hear what they say, speak it back to them, and then reframe it in a way that makes it so that, like, it's okay. We all do this. I think that's probably your strong suit, but I think that's our job as a franchisor, right?
Absolutely.
Got a proven business model. We've seen this a million times. You're going to be just fine. Just focus on the main thing, right? And that's really our job, I think, to lead people.
Sure.
And if you lead them that way, it helps them get organized personally. They'll lead their teams that way, and then they'll lead their clients that way even. So it trickles all the way down. That's all I got, man. The truths are trust is a currency, consistency over sporadically great, disrupt, don't innovate, and emotional resilience is essential. Anything else you want to add?
No, it's good. 34 years. With next year, we got to do it big. What's 35 going to be?
I don't know.
You got to come back from Vegas first.
Yep,
but,
that's right. 55 in Vegas. I don't know what I'm going to do. I could catch an early bird special. Maybe catch a show.
Catch a show.
Be
You
in
going to
bed
go to
by
the, what's the Sphere or whatever?
I would like to see the Sphere for sure. I don't know what's going on in there this weekend. I haven't even checked into it. I'm really going to have Adele tickets.
You look like a big Adele fan.
Be crying every day in my office listening to it.
Well, it's cool. Enjoy. Happy 34 years.
I appreciate it, man. You too. Thanks for being part of it.
Yes, sir.
Cheers.